good morning and welcome to our today's lesson. My name is Kodiko, teacher of biology. So from our previous lesson, we had talked about the neurons, and we now know that we have the sensory neuron, we have the motor neuron and the relay neuron. So today we're going to look at how an impulse is transmitted, and we have two types of impulses. We have what we are calling a simple reflex action, and the other one that we're going to see is conditioned reflex action. So first of all, we have to look at a simple reflex action. What is a simple reflex action? So this is a simple reflex action is an automatic response to a stimulus. The stimulus could either be internal or external. So we now understand that stimulus is those factors that bring about a change in an activity. So the route that is followed by a reflex or impulse is called reflex arc. That is the path that is followed by that impulse is what we are calling a reflex arc. So we want to look at how a reflex action takes place, that is simple reflex action. This is an example of a simple reflex action where we have hot objects, or maybe if you happen to touch a hot object or maybe a sharp pin, how does the impulse come until such a time that you withdraw your finger? So we want to look at this here. We have what we call the sensory neuron here, which is situated on the receptor organs, those parts of the body that are able to respond. So when the sensory nerve that is located at the receptor organ is triggered, or maybe the information is sent, you're going to realize that the information from sensory neuron, this is the sensory neuron within the cell body there, it will send the information to the spinal cord. And in the spinal cord, we are going to have what we call the central nervous system. So if you look at this, when your hand is pricked by a sharp object, it is going to be detected by the sensory neuron that sends the information to the gray matter of the spinal cord. So it is going to be sent, and then we realize that in between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron, there is another neuron here that we are calling intermediate or rather relay neuron. So when the information comes, then the information is going to be sent to the spinal cord, and then it is going to be passed via a gap here. This gap is what we call a synapse, and by definition we say that a synapse is a junction between the dendrites of two adjacent neurons. You can now see that we have a sensory neuron and a relay neuron. So the gap here is what we are calling a synapse. So the impulse is going to be passed on to the intermediate or relay neuron, which is then passed to the motor neuron. The motor neuron is connected to the ventral root. You can see it will follow the ventral root to the effector organs. Effector organs could be muscles. Let's say, for example, if you are looking at the withdrawal of the finger or the arm, then the muscles here are going to be two. That is the biceps muscles and the triceps muscles. Then if you realize that if the information is taken to the effector organ, what is going to happen? There is going to be contraction of the bicep muscles here. The bicep muscles will contract while the triceps will relax. That is to say that the two muscles, that is the biceps and the triceps, work antagonistically. When one is contracting, that is the biceps muscles contracting, and the other one relaxing, the arm is then pulled. That is, there's going to be pulling of the ulna and radius, and the hand is withdrawn. So when we are talking about a simple reflex action, then we are talking of that quick automatic response. It is very quickly, and you have no idea that maybe it has already been withdrawn. So this is just a diagram that is showing that. Maybe somebody can ask why that is the case, but we are going to look at why we're talking about the white matter and the gray matter. So what I was talking about is here, that is a reflex action follows the sequence below. That is a receptor is stimulated and an impulse is transmitted along a sensory nerve to the spinal cord. The impulse is then picked by an intermediate neuron within the central nervous system. This relay neuron or intermediate nerve fiber transmits the impulse to the motor neuron fiber, that is, which is connected to an effector, which could be muscles. The effector then responds by either contracting or relaxing to bring about a change. What are some of the examples of simple reflex action? We have pulling of the hand away from the hot object, or maybe a sharp pin, the knee jerk, sneezing. We can add some like, let's say, coughing. We also have a production of the tears when an onion is cut. So we have another type of reflex action that we are calling conditioned reflex action. When I talk about conditioned, when we are conditioned to something, then it means that there are things that are learned. It is based on the experience that someone maybe has. When two or more stimuli are presented to an animal at the same time and repeatedly, that is, with the experience repeatedly, the animal eventually responds to either. It cannot respond to both. So it responds to either of the two. So for example, if a hungry animal, for example a dog, is presented with food, it will respond by salivating. How is that done? If we look at the experiment that was carried out by the Dutch scientist, that is Ivan Pavlov, then he realized that if a bell is rung at the same time as the food is presented to the animal will learn to associate the sound of the bell with the food. So eventually the dog will learn that, or the animal will learn that can be made to salivate at the sound of the bell even if food is not presented. This response is said to be conditioned reflex action and is one of the ways by which animals learn. One major disadvantage of this is that conditioned reflex action always weakens with the time. So therefore, it requires continuous practice so that the animal associates that. We'll look at another thing, that is now the role of endocrine system in human beings. That is now we are talking about the hormonal system. How is it controlling? How is it coordinated so that it brings about different activities in human beings? So endocrine system consists of the glands that secrete hormones. And the glands have no ducts. When I talk about the gland having no duct, whatever hormones that they produce, they don't store them. That is what we are talking about. That the glands have no duct and are known as endocrine glands. And one of the major ones is what we are calling pituitary gland, which is the master gland that is controlling all other glands. So other glands are known as exocrine glands because they have ducts. So the pancreas is as an outer exocrine portion and an inner endocrine portion. And we know very well that this one, the islets of Langerhans of the pancreas always produce the two hormones, that is the insulin and the glucagon, that always regulate the amount of blood sugar. So hormones are chemical substances which are always protein in nature and are secreted at one point of the body and have effect on other parts, not necessarily near the point of their secretion. That means that we have several types of hormones that are produced, and these types of hormones are produced at particular areas and are used elsewhere. So it does not mean that any part where the hormones are used at particular points where they are secreted. So they are secreted directly into the blood and transported by blood. So the medium of transport is now the blood. So each hormone either has a generalized coordinating effect on the body or brings about a specific response in particular target organ. So these hormones that we are talking about, one, we can talk about the insulin that I've told you, which is produced by the islets of Langerhans of the pancreas, which will it is going to be produced when the blood sugar goes above normal. What does it do? It will regulate that by one, converting excess glucose into glycogen for storage in the blood. Then at the same time, it also increases the metabolism of glucose, and then lastly, it also increases the conversion of excess glucose into fats for storage in the adipose tissue. And the opposite will take place when we now come up with the glucagon hormone, when the blood sugar now goes below normal, so that is need to be raised. So it will do the opposite of what insulin is doing, that is converting the stored glycogen to glucose, converts stored fats back to glucose, and also reduces the metabolism of glucose to produce energy. So that is our lesson of today, and I think we're going to learn more when we come and meet next time. Thank you for listening.